Hi, my name is Gary Byrne. I'm a 29-year veteran of the federal law enforcement. I was 4 years in the Air Force Security Police. I was 12 years in the Secret Service Uniform Division. And I was 13 years as a federal air marshal. I just recently retired and I wrote the book Crisis of Character. And the discussion we're having today, I'm talking about, is my personal opinions of the safety of the country. We're coming up on the 15-year date of 9/11. When mostly Saudi Arabian raised terrorists attacked the United States using airplanes and box cutters and destroyed the World Trade Centers, destroyed part of the Pentagon, crashed another plane into an area in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And what I'm discussing today is, are we safer? We've spent billions and billions and billions of dollars. One of the reasons I left the Secret Service Uniform Division and went to the Air Marshal Service after 9/11 was because I thought my skills were needed. We were angry. We were attacked. But a lot of times we seem to get wrapped around the axle. One of the things that always bothered me about 9/11 is that we never kind of, I mean, we know who did it. Terrorists did it. Osama Bin Laden trained terrorists. We know a lot of them were from Saudi Arabia. But, you know, we never looked at some of the mistakes and things that we ignored. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that first. And one of the things, I was in this U.S. Secret Service starting in 1991. By 1993, we were hearing the name Osama Bin Laden. We knew who he was, the intelligence agencies of this country. And in the early 90s, he declared war on the United States. And, you know, for lack of a better term, we kind of laughed at him. We didn't really do anything about it. Oh, what could he ever do to us? Well, he showed us, didn't he? That's one of the things I want to talk about. It's kind of like we have this, some of the people in government have this arrogance. Oh, he could never do anything else, you know. And I wonder if anybody's ever learned a lesson from this. And here's the lesson: if some terrorist says that he's at war with the United States, take him at his word. Take the initiative and attack him, find him, and kill them. Because if we had done that with Osama bin Laden, maybe things would have been a little bit different. And one of the things that always bothered me about 9/11 was, you know, I worked at the White House. I was in the Secret Service from 1991 to 2003. I protected the Clintons for 8 years. And one of the things that always bothered me after 9/11 was that, you know, the Clinton presidency, 8 years, was full of scandals. There was approximately 19 scandals. A lot of them revolved around women, around drug accusations, around all kinds of different things. And here's the thing: if you're in administration, a presidential administration, with all these scandals, and you're having to hire all these lawyers and have all these investigations, who's running the country? I mean, do you think is it unfair to look back and say, maybe if Bill Clinton wasn't so caught up in all his bad behavior and scandals, maybe we would have paid more attention to Osama bin Laden? Is that possible? Certainly, you know, we know that Qaeda had a 3 to 5 year planning cycle. Bill Clinton was president for 8 years. It's not a stretch to say that they did a lot of that planning during his time. After 9/11, like in the first week, when some people did ask those questions. And, you know, when 9/11 happened, President George W. Bush had been president for only about 7 months. And but Bill Clinton had been president for the last 8 years, and again, their planning cycle is 3 to 5 years, so it's not hard to do the math there. And some people did ask questions about this, and you know who the first senator was to step up and squash that down? Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton. Now's not the time to point fingers, she said. Now's the time to defend ourselves. And she was kind of right, but nobody ever went back, and nobody ever said, well, of course she's going to say that because it's her husband's administration that possibly ignored the signs. So it's just something to think about. Are we more secure today? Well, I can tell you we spent a lot more money. We have TSA, we have Homeland Security, we have these giant agencies, the Federal Air Marshal Service. I do believe in the Federal Air Marshal Service. To be fair, I was a Federal Air Marshal for 13 years. I believe in the program. Does it need to be tweaked? It does. We need to have some more standards. We need to make sure our employees are a little bit more physical combat motivated, a little bit more athletic. Their firearm skills. Do they need less management, less supervision? Yes. That's one of these problems with these big government agencies. We throw all these money at them, and they have these big, giant management organizations. If you looked at the way how many supervisors and management in the Federal Air Marshal Service, which comes under the TSA, and the TSA is Transportation Security Administration, has this huge network of supervisors, and they're all administrators. Very few people in TSA are law enforcement. They have some, but very few are. Then you go up to Homeland Security, and again, this huge management system. Wouldn't it behoove us to streamline it? One, it would save money. Two, the reporting ability would be quicker. We would get information faster. We'd be more streamlined. And anybody, you could never run a company, a publicly traded company, like the government runs these programs. They have so many different supervisors and managers and deputy directors and assistant deputy directors. It's just mind-boggling. So that's one of the things I think we should look at. Are we safer than we were 15 years ago? Yes, we are, in certain ways. But I'm afraid we're getting wrapped around the axle again. We're too worried about, I mean, we're at the point now where the senator who said, don't look over here because she didn't want anybody looking at what her husband did or didn't do when he was president, is now trying to become president, and she's embroiled in scandal. Are we setting ourselves up because we're going to be ignoring Homeland Security and national security and be caught up whether, Mrs. Clinton's health is good, or the fact that her employees are running around crushing her blackberries with hammers because she's too arrogant to follow security procedures? These are things that concerns me, and to be honest with you, some people may see this video and say, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Let me tell you, read my book, Crisis of Character. I'm a subject matter expert, consider myself clearly a subject matter expert on the Clintons' behavior, and I'm certainly a subject matter expert on Homeland Security, anti-terrorism, and law enforcement. So I ask you to consider these things. One of the ways we are more secure now, where people pay attention, see something, say something. And that's a good thing. It's not perfect, but it's a good thing. So my hope is that we don't ever experience that kind of terrorism again, but I do have concerns. I look at the way President Obama is currently conducting his office, and he's bringing in all these Syrian refugees. Women and children are one thing, but bringing in a lot of these young men that are in war-fighting age, between the ages of say, let's say 16, 17, and the mid-40s, or even late 40s, is it smart to bring these people in without screening them and making sure we know who they are and that they don't have any ill will towards the United States? I mean, wouldn't it make more sense to keep these people in the Middle East and set up safe places for them over there instead of bringing them to our country? It boggles the mind why we would want to try to bring in people that could possibly be part of a terrorist organization or be at least open-minded to the bizarre jihadi mentality. These are things that concern me. They concern me greatly. Sometimes I do feel like I'm stuck in a time machine when I see some of the same mistakes being made. I go back to my book, Crisis of Character. I wrote about the bizarre way Mrs. Clinton behaves. We see her behaving that way again, and nobody seems to care. Nobody, it's just no matter how crazy it gets. She's literally, during a press conference, she was barking like a dog. Nobody thought that was odd. Could there be something wrong with her? She, as Secretary of State, she's now telling us that she wasn't smart enough and competent enough to know that she couldn't have her own private server. And her emails have been leaked out now showing her staff that they're afraid of her. Just like I described 20 years ago when Bill Clinton's staff was afraid of Hillary Clinton when she was the First Lady because of her bizarre, dangerous, eruptive anger and behavior. And now the same thing happened as she's Secretary of the State, and they're afraid to tell her that that what she wants to do is against the rules and the law. And that brings me to another thing. If Mrs. Clinton's one of these politicians, wants these big government programs with all these rules and regulations, but she wants two standards. She wants the standard for the Clintons herself, where you don't do anything, you do whatever you want, and then everybody else in the country is supposed to follow the law and the rules, and it's not right. And I think that does make us more susceptible to terrorism. I mean, how many, the FBI director looked us right in the face and said that she could be prosecuted, but he decided not to do it. But he did tell us she was a liar. He told us she lied to us at least 5 times. Then we're finding out that there were multiple devices. They probably destroyed 13 devices. And let me ask you this. If you've ever worked for a company or been in the federal government, who's allowed to destroy government equipment with a hammer? Nobody. But they destroyed possibly as many as 13 devices because of her bizarre behavior, not wanting to follow government security regulations. And when you hear people talk about there was 110 classified emails on her private server that wasn't secured, those aren't just electronic digital messages. Those are people's lives. Those are people that work for the State Department, the CIA, the NSA, in the military. Those are people that work for the U.S. government that travel all over the world they're doing dirty things that we don't ever want to hear about, trying to protect us. And she is so cavalier with it. If she became president, who in their right mind, a head of another state or a chief of that state's security and intelligence, would trust her with information? This is something to think about. Do I think those kind of things make us less secure? I absolutely do, and it concerns me greatly.